Hey there, Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And if you are new here, my name is Hannah. I'm a Western Practical Astrologer. Okay, so today we are going to be talking all about the Cadent houses in astrology, the houses of adjustments, and you will see why in just a moment. Though, before we do get into this, if you would like to learn more about astrology, then head on over to the Cosmic Check-In podcast. And if you would like to book a reading with me, then go to hannahselsewhere.com. Also, if you would like to learn more about how to read your birth chart simply, you can always pick up a copy of my astrology cheat sheets below. Thank you so much. Another thing to mention here is that if you want to learn more about the houses can be found over on my podcast. So that's episodes 22 all the way to 33. I have dedicated an episode to each house. Well, let's consider then the Cadent houses. We talked about the angular houses and how the angular houses strongly point toward our identity, different parts of our identity. And they start the ball rolling, right? We think about the first house really beginning everything for us, setting the stage in a way, with the rising sign especially there. Then we come to the succeeding houses and we explored those through a lens of security, different types of security, and really looking at how those succeeding houses look at this very stable, secure effect, almost as if things are being held in place. But then we come to, and also they strengthen things, right? We have the angular houses that start things, and the succeeding houses come after, and they strengthen things. But then we come to the Cadent houses, and the Cadent houses are so much about change. We adapt, we adjust. And we're going to talk about these different types of adaptations as we explore the Cadent houses. So let's think about here the third house. So the third house does come after the second house in the chart. The second house, we explored how that house is so much about our physical security, financial security, our physical stability. So the resources that we accumulate, how we support our lifestyle, things like that. But then we come to the third house, and this is a house that gets us thinking differently. We look here at these mental adaptations where our mindset can shift, our mindset can change. Naturally, with the third house, yes, it is also about our beginning stages with relation to our mind, our communication, language, learning. Consider how the third house is so much about our early schooling. Our early schooling years, the types of interactions we had with our family, thinking about siblings and cousins, our peers, our classmates, people within our local area. But naturally, it's also about how our mind can adjust. We're so impressionable, especially as kids, right? Kids are known for absorbing information like sponges, and kids really can observe their environment and notice things, pick up on things. But naturally, the other thing to add to this is that as we get older, we can change. Our views can change, how we see the world can change. And a lot of that then is to do with our mindset. So that would be one way that our mind can adjust. Then we come to the sixth house, and the sixth house is so much about our daily lifestyle, our habits, our routines, things that you do on a daily basis. What is your morning routine like? What is your evening routine like? Naturally, that can change depending on many factors. And this then is about daily life adaptations. Though the sixth house does come after the fifth house, and the fifth house is so much about things like fun, enjoyment, play, pleasure, our time off. So our time off work. But the sixth house is about work. The sixth house is about having to make sure that we have things in order, that the things that we do on a daily basis, that they align with our security goals, or they align with the things that we're trying to aim towards. And our health naturally also falls under this house. I mean, health is wealth at the end of the day. Without your health, what do you really have? And that's why the sixth house is so important. That's why it's important to change, to adjust, so that we are healthier. Even the sixth house is about disease. We find illnesses here within the sixth house. We may be more susceptible to certain illnesses. Therefore, yes, the sixth house says adjust physically. Okay, then we come to the ninth house. And as you can see here, the ninth house is so much about our philosophical adaptations. And this to me is where the ninth house, yes, it opposes the third house, getting us to really question our perspective more so, wider. So, for example, it's one thing to be told what to think, what to learn within our local area, especially within our early schools. So, if you consider being a student, growing up, and what you were taught. So, it's one thing to have those influences shape our mind, but it's another thing to then go out into the world and explore and to see what else life has to offer, to live in a different country, to learn a different language, to meet people from different backgrounds, different cultures, to even maybe study abroad at a university, or to spend some time living abroad for a work experience situation. Basically, the ninth house gets us out there. It pushes us, it represents really us being pushed outside of our comfort zone. And then that's also where our philosophical adaptations can occur. Maybe you're someone who was raised within a particular religious belief system, but then that changes throughout your life because of a travel experience, because of a new religion, because you meet someone from a whole different background, different culture. Maybe you marry someone from a different culture, and then, yes, your worldview can certainly change. So there's another way that our life can change with these cadent houses. Then we come to our final cadent house, and it's the 12th house. So this type of adaptation is about spiritual adaptations. And that goes beyond what is logical, what is rational, what is rational, and what is seen. Because the 12th house gets us questioning, really, what is this all about? Why are we here? 9th house also speaks to that. It does. It speaks to that philosophically, religiously, etc., your belief system. But the 12th house also speaks to this. It gets us thinking beyond the material, beyond the physical. But then I'm also going to say here that this is about aligning with what our spirit, what our soul craves, which is certainly in some ways different to the daily life stuff in the 6th house. So if you can imagine, if we're always go, 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 busy, to-do lists, checking things off, when are we making time to really check in with our mind, to check in with what our body needs? Are we listening to the body? Are we listening to certain messages, especially if you're someone who does believe in a higher power, if you're someone who believes that you have an inner voice and it's guiding you, that you're intuitive? If you believe in those things, how often do you actually nurture those things? Do you make those things a priority? And of course, we are seeing these types of themes with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo right now. I'm recording this, by the way, September of 2025. So yes, this is another form of adapting, of change, looking to the 12th house. So now that we have explored each of the Cadent houses, let's think about how they connect to one another. Let's consider the third house again. So the third house is so much about our early developmental stages of learning. For example, walking and speaking. We start to examine the key players within our environment and how we then retrieve information from them by communicating. Siblings, cousins, peers, classmates, neighbors, all located here. How shaped we are, how shaped we become, how impressionable we are to those figures, to these characters within our life. We then also draw connections from what we learn. We piece things together logically within this house. It's a very logical house. And our local city / our local town shows up here. Consider what your relationship is like with your local environment. How safe do you feel within it? Or not? Short distance trips also show up in the third house. So short distance travel. And a change of scenery is also shown here within the third house. Seeking a change of scenery, seeking some adjustment. Then we come to the sixth house, and the attitude that you have about your daily employment and routines are located here. What we do is we come to terms with the mundane, everyday chores and duties, as well as things we practice for good health. The way we approach the workforce can then reflect the kind of education we received. Third house. So if you can see that connection, thinking about even how the third house can lay the foundation for our education. And then we come to the sixth house, and then it's a question of, okay, are you qualified for this job? So yes, for example, not going to school might not sit well with future employers. Of course, this can vary. It depends on the situation. But then also being an A-star student at school, but then being humbled by your starting position. Any unresolved issues with siblings, with our peers, third house, can also be reflective of the type of co-worker experiences we have. So there's co-worker relationships. Very sixth house. That one I find interesting because that was something that I learned from the 12 Houses book by Howard Saspertaz. Really interesting to see those connections. Okay, then the ninth house. So within the ninth house, we really start to question and understand what we have already learned, possibly resulting in a change in our beliefs, our worldviews, or changing morality. Maybe something you find to be morally correct is something that you later deem to be immoral, wrong in your view. You may discover such things through experience, travel, culture, scholars, lecturers, preachers. But then challenges can also arise if logic, third house, clashes with your new beliefs, with your new morals. Or if you preach your newfound truth in a way that rubs others the wrong way, third house. I imagine this, for example, as someone setting off on a trip. They travel abroad, they live abroad for a short period of time, and then they come back from their trip and they start to share all of this new information that they learn with maybe their siblings, their family, their friends. But their friends don't have that experience. They don't understand that experience. So they may see it as, oh, okay, so Now they're trying to preach at me. Now they're trying to tell me that what I'm doing is wrong. And then that can create conflict within relationships naturally. But then also what we see here, if your new beliefs could impact your health and your well-being. That's another possibility. Yes, that's very sixth house. So new beliefs that we take on as our own, new morals. I even think about people joining cults, or they join a new faith, but they're actually not doing themselves any favors. They're not realizing how much they're putting their own body through hell, honestly. So, for example, not eating meat because you believe it is morally wrong. That's just one example. I'm not saying that from that it's morally wrong to not eat meat, or that if you don't eat meat, that there's something wrong with you either. It's just an example. Legal matters also show up in the ninth house. Okay, lastly, then we have the 12th house. So the deeper layers of your psyche are located here. So the deeper layers of your psyche, which you are massively unconscious of, but such things, they are shared with everything else, right? So this is where we see the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung talked about. It's where all of our memories and our past experiences are stored and can be viewed as the Akashic records. So all human events, thoughts, emotions. Taking substances or drugs, daydreaming or sleeping can activate this house. Challenges can also arise if preachers deceive you by claiming they know how the universe works or who God is. So that's where we see the clash between the 12th and the 9th house. Likewise, challenges can occur if you disconnect from your body. 6th house, that's important. That's important. Yeah, because I was saying a moment ago that an example of the 12th house is you could be so busy, so caught up in your to-do lists that you at times overlook the spiritual stuff. You overlook checking in, being more meditative, trying to calm your mind, resting. However, the same can be said about the 12th house to the 6th, where we disengage, we isolate, we don't show up in the world. We find it too difficult to do all of the daily stuff. So we see that back and forth. There can be the avoidance, escapism, unhealthy escapism through the 12th house that can, yes, clash with our body. Disconnecting from the body is not a healthy thing to do. Okay, then lastly, if we're making decisions, so if we are making decisions and it becomes difficult to do that because of mental confusion, right? And that speaks to the connection between the 3rd house and the 12th house, where we might be super indecisive, we might experience mental fog, or we might not trust in our decision making. So, as I was saying with the 12th house, yes, it's so much about our intuition, but equally, I'm going to say this, following our intuition doesn't mean that we completely deny all logic and reason either. We want to consider this holistically, right? We have to think about how logic and reason can come in with intuition, as well as the practical stuff, as well as the moral elements, morality. Yes, so indeed, considering how we can adapt and adjust, but to do that in a holistic way. And that's also what I'm trying to highlight with these squares. But last thing I'm going to say here about this is it's still this square connection. So whenever we can approach these challenges between these houses within our lives and how they show up, and we'll get through the signs in a moment, but whenever we can approach them, overcome the challenges, then that's when there is greater stability, there's greater structure. things are more holistic in our lives. Of course, there's more to that because of transits. There are times in life when things are more challenging. There are times in life when things are not so balanced. And that's what astrology teaches us. So I hope that this video or the set of videos can assist you in some way when it comes to making sense of these houses. All right, make sure that you do read or watch, my apologies, that you watch for your rising sign. And we will be using the whole sign system. So regardless of whatever system you use, just watch for your rising sign, see how things resonate, and I'll put the timestamps below. All right. First up, then we have, Aquarius Risings. Yes, Aquarius Risings. Let's talk about these Cadent houses for you. Well, you have this Mars Aries influence in the third house of your mental adaptations. So, what this suggests to me is that there is a willingness and eagerness to want to adjust or adapt to new information that comes in. I do see this as, on one hand, you being quite narrow minded in your views at times, in that you can be so focused in on this is my view, this is what I think. But equally, whenever you can be proven through evidence, research, data, whatever it is, when you can be proven, your mind can be challenged then. So new information coming in can challenge your perspective. It can challenge even your logic, your reasoning. So then because that comes in, things can adjust. Your mindset, your perspective can adjust. And you'll be quite willing to do that, I think, provided that you don't let pride get in the way, or you don't let your own ego get in the way either. And then equally, I think that there is an eagerness to want to share what you learn with other people too. Almost like there's this excitability, this giddiness to you to want to pass on whatever new information you learn about to other people. But then let's move over to this moon influence, right? The moon, Cancer in the sixth house. And this is where we see that you can actually be very sensitive to your daily habits, your routines. There's a comfort that they offer you. There's a type of emotional security, and you might seek to nurture what you do on a daily basis. So, times whenever new information does come in, maybe there is a part of you that is fearful a little bit or is hesitant a little bit, because new information could threaten your security, could threaten your livelihood, could threaten your daily routines and habits. Then we come to the Libra influence, right? So this Venus influence in the ninth house, and what we see with respect to your philosophical adaptations is you can be quite the listener. Learning maybe throughout your life that listening is where you're going to get so much useful information. It's about being able to place yourself into other people's shoes. And that's also where a lot of your philosophical wisdom comes from. That's where your morality also comes from. It's your willingness to want to see the world be better and to make the world just a better place for everybody. This is what we get with this Libra influence in the ninth. Now, as for the square, though, between the moon and Venus, maybe a part of this is also about your emotions. Maybe a part of this is having to assess and probably be honest with yourself about things that are not so practical, actually, things that are not so aligned. It's so, because the thing is we could see this as you being overly idealistic about society, about humanity, about changes that you want to see. We could also see this through a lens of you wanting to nurture everybody around you and be there and support everybody. but you can't. That's physically impossible. You can't support the whole world. And that within itself can take some adjusting. That can even bring up a lot of emotion for you, a lot of pain for you. And then this leads me on to the Capricorn stuff in the 12th house, because I'm thinking with Capricorn in the 12th, it does speak to you having to learn spiritual lessons with relation to being more practical, being more realistic. It's so interesting to me because Aquarius is often known for being super detached, super aloof, or unfeeling, uncaring. But actually, Aquarius is such a deeply emotional sign. It's just that those emotions they're underneath and they feel it all, but they also realize that they can't just spill all of that out onto everybody, because they are very concerned about, okay, well, how realistic is this? How practical is this? How is this going to really help this person? There is a type of reserved quality here, seeing even spiritual lessons to do with being reserved, holding space for other people, letting other people figure things out for themselves, and not trying to nurture them or baby them or care for them, to mother. Yeah, mother them is the word that I was trying to reach for there. You can't be this global mother to society. I also think partly that this behavior, this dynamic, which to be fair is more unconscious, this can manifest as you enabling. When you don't let people figure it out for themselves, it can kind of enable them to depend on other people. But maybe the biggest gift you can give others is to let them figure it out for themselves, to learn those hard lessons for themselves, because life can be so cruel. It can be. Life is full of adversity, full of challenges. And so it's about building that resilience. That is a form of support. Of course, there's more nuance to that. It's not about just giving up on people or rejecting them, abandoning them. No, we're more so talking about times whenever this stuff is unhealthy and you can see it, and you have to create that distance, you have to create that separation, and you have to let other people figure it out. They have to be able to grow themselves and live life themselves, to be independent. And then you see, to circle this back to Aries in the third, by you learning those spiritual lessons to do with the real world, practical steps, practical measures to support people, that within itself can then support you mentally, because then you become more mature as a communicator, as a speaker. I'm thinking, and this is the last thing I'm going to say here, Aquarius Risings, when you're younger, you might be really quick to share your advice, to speak on things instantly, maybe being quite impulsive, not considering other people's feelings. But life shows you how to mature intellectually, how to speak on matters from more of a to speak about matters from more of a nuanced place, and from a place of, okay, I have seen this, I've lived this, and I'm gonna try and communicate from a more responsible place, ultimately. Thank you so much, Aquarius Risings. And now we're going to move on to Taurus Risings. All right, Taurus Risings, let's talk about the Cadent houses for you. Well, we notice here that you've got the moon, you've got Cancer in the third house, highlighting how much of an emotional communicator you can be. Yes, sure, Taurus, very much a sign of being quite calm, reserved, laid back, slow to start new things. You can come across as somewhat chilled, right? This chilled, laid back demeanor. But actually, when it comes to communication, when it comes to your mindset, many times you can live from the emotional side of your brain, or you can be quite reactive to your environment, quite reactive to what other people have to say. So I'm going to touch more on that in a moment. I just want to connect something else in. We'll get back to that. Let's then think about this Libra influence in the sixth house. So you've got this Venetian Libra influence ruling your routines and your daily habits. So this is where we see that you tend to enjoy that balance and that harmony that your routines and daily habits offer you. You prefer what is more familiar. That makes sense with Taurus on the rising, another Venus ruled sign. It's more grounded, it's more about stability and routine. But with Libra here, this can suggest that when things are not in balance, when things are out of balance, then you can experience maybe anxiety. You can become stressed, worried. And then also, this brings us back to the third house stuff. It's what other people say and how you respond to other people that can equally shake up and change the way you show up every day. For example, a certain conversation that you have with a sibling, with a family member, could very well impact the way you show up routine wise. For example, losing sleep, not eating right, being very sensitive to your coworkers, maybe bringing some sibling rivalry stuff into the relationships you have with coworkers, where it's that little thing that they say that trigger you. So we see the emotional triggers essentially, right? So then we come to this Capricorn influence in the ninth house. And so when we consider philosophical adaptations, this is about you growing in your maturity, growing in your knowledge, growing in your wisdom. This within itself can support you emotionally. It can support you within conversations. For example, recognizing your triggers, recognizing whenever someone says a particular word or they use a particular tone, the way their voice raises, whatever it is. So you can recognize those things that do get to you. Maybe they stem from something deeper. They stem from the past. They stem from family situations. So perhaps could be through higher education. It could be through study, furthering yourself, research. Could be through a new religion even, that you grow to become more just level and to be more mindful of what gets through, not letting certain things really get to you on an emotional level. For example, having healthy boundaries possibly. But then also this could be a case of you perhaps going out and sharing what you learn with the world, becoming a mentor, becoming a lecturer, becoming a teacher. And that could require you to follow a long path, many years of study, many years of research, devoting your life to a particular field. And so it's through that learning process that your mindset is also changed, that how you communicate changes. Okay, then we come to, let's go with this Aries influence in the 12th house. And this is where we see that when it comes to spiritual adaptations, A big part of what you're coming to learn is how to assert yourself, how to initiate, how to share and express your anger and your frustrations in a healthy way, such as being straightforward with someone, direct with someone, being able to say, that hurt me. You hurt my feelings because of this. I am feeling this way. So I hope you can see this difference, because what I think happens here is that you mature when it comes to communication. You mature when it comes to your delivery. And a part of that, I also think, is tied to trying not to avoid conflict too. Trying not to avoid conflict, because what could happen is you might experience during your younger years so much of this emotional stuff, and then it could get to a point where in your older years you fear not bringing up the emotional stuff because you are afraid of what that could lead to. You don't want it to lead to violence. You don't want it to lead to fighting or lashing out or things like that. So we want to consider this through a more healthy, balanced lens. What I'm also going to say here about this Venus square Saturn stuff between the 6th and the 9th, this could be where we see maybe resistance between you and coworkers, or possibly you and preachers, you and lecturers, people who they consider themselves to be the authority on life. So we could see, the clashes in agreement, essentially. And then that also speaks to the moon stuff in the 3rd house of being very reactive. So again, we circle this back to the Aries in the 12th, speaking to those spiritual lessons to do with asserting yourself, your identity, taking charge, taking the lead within your life, trying not to sit on the fence too much, trying not to be super indecisive either about certain opportunities. If, for example, something does feel off and you know it, to go and speak to someone about it. Essentially, Taurus Risings, this is about you aligning more strongly with your personal autonomy, being able to take charge of your life, to direct your life with greater authority, but also with greater emotional understanding. Maybe understanding times whenever you do react, or times whenever you do become emotionally charged within social situations. And to not fear conflict, because conflict is going to happen in life. There's going to be times whenever we disagree, but it doesn't mean that conflict has to lead to people becoming argumentative or people fighting unnecessarily. Thank you so much, Taurus Risings. Now we're going to move on to Leo Risings. Okay, Leo Risings, let's talk about the Cadent houses for you. Let's consider, first of all, this Libra Venus influence in your 3rd house. Okay, this is where we see your ability to pretty much get on with anyone, everyone. We see your ability to be very communicative, skilled within communication, and relatable. Being able to relate to other people, listen to them, ask them about themselves, ask them about their day. And equally, we also see your capacity to stand for justice if or when justice is required. If you feel like something is unfair, if you feel like something is out of balance within a social situation, you could very well aim to create that balance. And where I go to partly with this one is, for example, you might notice whenever a conversation is not very balanced in your view, maybe between you and someone else, between you and certain family members or amongst family members, you might even try to come in with your own advice of what you think is the best option, the best possible outcome for people, so that there is greater harmony within the atmosphere. Okay, then we come to the Capricorn influence in the 6th house. So this is where we notice with Saturn there how often your daily habits and your routines, they are things that you take seriously. They are things that you can dedicate so much of your time and your effort into, and that you come to learn mature and valuable lessons with relation to your health and your well-being. We also notice that there are certain limitations you experience daily, and you may come to accept those limitations, even thinking about a particular physical limitation, a body limitation. And you're aware of that and you accept that. Could also be a case of certain limitations between you and coworkers, or when it comes to work in general, things that you are to consider for your livelihood. You have to take those things into account for your future. So you can be rather practical and responsible in this regard. And you're not easily fooled either when it comes to things like work, coworker relationships. Basically, when you want to get the job done, you're going to want to do it well. You're going to want to do it exceptionally. And you may also desire to work alongside people who know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But then I'm thinking, because of this Saturn square Venus stuff, we also see the challenges to do with communication itself, such as times when others might perceive you as being overly serious or overly critical or overly punishing about daily habits that need to be attended to or daily tasks. Or we could see this as the peace being disturbed, or the peace actually not being very peaceful, maybe due to a potential resentment that builds or something that isn't being addressed above the surface. Could also be between siblings. This could be between or amongst family members. And those types of injustices, in your view, or those types of pettiness, the types of petty interactions, those are what could very well interfere with your ability to focus or build. Or it could be a case of you're told that you're too work focused. Why don't you make time for us? Why are you always spending time at work? Why are you always spending time within that particular role? It could even be applied to exercise, spending a lot of time at the gym, or being very restrictive when it comes to your diet, when it comes to your routines, and nothing can change those. So there could be some tension there. Okay, then we come to this Mars, Aries stuff in the 9th house. So when we consider your philosophical adaptations, well, you certainly learn a thing or two about what you believe in, what you follow as an individual, regardless of what other people have to say or think. You truly come to terms with what your beliefs are, what your worldview is, what your code of ethics are, and then you will gladly share those things with anybody who is willing to listen. Even people who aren't willing to listen, you'll still share them, and you'll still stay true to them in a large way here. Heck, I imagine this, for example, as many Leo risings losing friends, losing connections because of your beliefs, because of a new belief that you are so focused on, you stay true to, you stand by it. And then this also shows, I think, a type of courage, a type of bravery for you to stand up for what is right, for you to stand up for what is true and morally acceptable in your eyes, right? And hey, you know what? Also, that the challenge there between Mars and the Mars and Saturn, so Capricorn and Aries, the challenge there could be some tensions between you and could be coworkers, could be certain members of service, it could be arguments about people's dietary choices, it could be arguments over how people choose to live their life because you think you're like, how can you live your life like that? That's so unhealthy to me, or that's so it's just not right. It's just not right. Have you not thought about the world? Have you not thought about humanity? These types of conversations could come in. Okay, and then we have this Cancer moon influence in the 12th. So, to think about your spiritual adaptations, well, Leo risings, you are being taught a thing or two about empathy, listening to other people's needs, and seeing that people come from all different walks of life. They have their different views and theories. That when it comes to the philosophical stuff, or when it comes to, when it comes to how the world is run, people are going to have their mixed opinions, and matters can be very complex, and it's not just one thing, and that people's emotions are going to come into it. Maybe also it's questioning your own emotions too, how you feel about these larger, more complex subjects, bigger picture these bigger picture conversations, how you feel about them. And also, it could be a case of your own protection. Maybe it's about trying to make sure that you and your family are safe. Maybe that's a part of the unconscious driving factor behind all of this. It's about that emotional attachment, that emotional comfort and security. What you need, what your personal feelings are. But then, hey, equally too, maybe a part of this is because you're so caught up in everybody else's emotional stuff too, right? That could be a part of it, where you can almost be overly empathetic or overly merging with everybody else. You so desperately want to see these changes within society, within the world, and a lot of that could be coming from a place of immense empathy, immense compassion, but to the point of you experiencing this somewhat empathy fatigue, this compassion fatigue. Then you're basically wearing yourself out. You're becoming super emotional and overly reactive to everybody. And it's a question of, well, how can you bring it back to your personal feelings? Because I think a part of this with the 12th house could be about you trying to connect with everybody else's around you, so their feelings. And then I think with the moon square Venus, this could be where you doing that inner work can support you within conversations, where you're not as easily swayed or impacted by the imbalances. Maybe a part of this is about observing, a part of this is about healthy separation. I'm also thinking about Aquarius in the 7th house for you. Healthy separation. And to see that oftentimes, whatever other people are going through, it's not about you. It's not about you. And so it's not your job to go in and maybe fix or change or feel like you have to take on their emotional stuff. Thank you so much, Leo Risings. And now we're going to move on to Scorpio Risings. All right, Scorpio Risings, let's talk about the Cadent houses for you. Firstly, you have this Saturn influence in your 3rd house, suggesting that, well, let me put it this way. When you make up your mind is made. Yeah. What I mean by this is that it's very, very difficult to get you to change your mind. Very difficult. especially if you've been pushed to a certain point. If you've put down a firm boundary, like, no, no. Some could say that you're quite stubborn in your decision making, but others could say, and maybe you would more so agree to this, that you have every right to think this way, to make up your mind, to be set. You have every right. And maybe also a part of this is tied to self-preservation. It could be tied to having to make sure that your security is protected, that your well-being is protected, and to have other people trying to come in and try to sway, manipulate, try to get you to change your opinion. In your view, that could be seen as a bit shady. Like, why are you so determined to get me to change my mind on this? Okay, we're going to build on that a little bit. Okay, just in a moment though, I want to mention the Aries Mars stuff in the 6th house, because when it comes to your everyday adaptations, your daily habits, things like that, you can be quite the independent person. You might seek to do things your way correctly the first time around. And we also see your ability to take the lead when it comes to problem solving, the practical things that need to be attended to, your ability to address those things head on, to step up to particular challenges as well. Having said that, yes, we do want to consider your chart. I'm even thinking about how Neptune has recently entered Aries, and then Saturn. Okay, so Saturn and Neptune will both be in Aries from 2026 onwards for a while. And so, yes, we can indeed see those challenges to do with the everyday. So there's more nuance to that. But I still think that it's here we notice your ability to take the lead. But yet, with this Mars square Saturn, we also notice the self-preservation stuff. Because maybe one way to think about this is you making decisions for yourself because that is all you've ever known. That's what you're used to. You've had to support yourself. You've had to provide for yourself. Survival in many ways. And so for you, it's about making the best decision for the best outcomes in your life, because that speaks to your overall security. Okay, then we come to this moon influence in the 9th house. You've got this Cancerian influence. So when we consider your philosophical adaptations, again, this is about security. This is about protection. Maybe many of you Scorpio risings, you believe in what you believe in, maybe because of what you've learned through your family history. Yes, an example of this could be your mother quite literally passing on her beliefs to you and you believing in those things, those same beliefs. Or this could be a lot more complex than that, not so straightforward. For example, this could manifest as a challenge within your family, within your home growing up. And maybe that within itself gave you that push to relocate, to move abroad, to get away from the family dynamic, to provide for yourself in some way away from the home, away from your family. Or it could be a case of you, in an indirect way, learning from your family what you believe in. So could even be, for example, you choosing a completely different path because of unhealthy dynamics, unhealthy attachments to certain religions, to certain beliefs between your family. Then we come to this Venus Libra influence in the 12th house. And your spiritual adaptations, well, what do they speak to? They speak to the other. They speak to compromise. They speak to healthy give and take. And hopefully recognizing that you don't have to go at it alone. See, I'm thinking that, and this may not apply to every Scorpio rising out there, but I am thinking that for many of you, there is this ingrained belief that the world is unsafe, that you need to protect yourself at all costs. People cannot be trusted. And hey, that makes sense because, yeah, perhaps many people have let you down. They've disrespected you. They've went against your wishes. They've betrayed you. But what if a part of your growth is about learning to let people in, to trust people? It's not about trusting everyone here. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that to trust people who are genuine, who want to help, who want to support you, who want to work as a team with you. They're not trying to take from you. They're trying to work with you. So I think Libra speaks to this collaboration, collaborating with others. Could be a spouse, a business partner, a close friend. And this is where I think that when you do find people like that, you are great, right? You can be very receptive. You can be so loving, so compassionate, so warm even. There is a warmth to you, Scorpio risings. Very protective of your loved ones. You show your love. And maybe a part of this, though, is about being slow. This could speak to the Venus square Saturn. It's that slow and steady build through communication, learning from others, learning from what they say. And hey, more than that, learning from what they say in comparison to what they do. And you can maybe notice the inconsistencies there. You can notice whenever someone is just all talk. They're just all talk. They're not actually aligning their actions with their words. So whenever you find people in your life whose words align with their actions, you're more trustworthy. You're more likely to let them in and to have a steady relationship. And then you see it's through these perspectives, these changes, right? The spiritual adaptations to do with relationships, to do with connecting, to do with harmonizing with another person, collaborating with another person. It's through those things that you then mature communication-wise, right? You mature in such a way where you can listen to what other people have to say, what other people have to bring to the equation. So if, for example, another person says, you know, what you said there really hurt me, or can we just try and compromise here? Maybe you're more willing to hear them out. You're not as quick, maybe, to just say, no, my mind is made up. I don't want to have another conversation about this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Yeah, this is where we see healthier communication between you and a spouse, you and a partner. Thank you so much, Scorpio risings. And now we're going to move on to Pisces risings. Moving on then to Pisces risings. So Pisces risings, when we look to the Cadent houses for you, let's firstly look to this Taurus Venus influence in the 3rd house. This is where we see that You take your time when it comes to making decisions. You'll want to make sure that all areas are covered, that you've considered your options. So there's a slowness to your decision-making process, to how you arrive at two conclusions. And you can be quite practical in your approach as well. Equally, this is where we see that, well, it can take you some time to have your mind changed too, especially when you have considered all angles, all areas. Then we see that you've got Leo in the 6th house, this sun influence activating this 6th house area. So in many ways, this is where we see your ability to shine at work, shine when it comes to your daily habits and routines, or that you gain so much purpose from your daily habits, your rituals. Naturally, it's not about going all in. It's not about overcommitting in this way. After all, for you, Pisces risings, there is a greater flow. You might consider, okay, do I need to rest? Do I feel like doing that today? Is this really what I want to do? So you're still going to be mindful about, okay, what does your body need? How can you invite maybe greater trust to do with your intuition as well? And then I'm also thinking that when you are praised for your service, the services you offer and provide, when you're praised for how you show up at work, maybe, you get so much from that. You may thrive actually at work, especially when you're celebrated or whenever you're in a position of power in some way. When you're the manager, you're the boss, or whenever you get to make the decisions. Self-employment comes to mind. You having a say when it comes to your daily routines and habits, where you're not being monitored and watched. Okay, let's then think about this Scorpio influence in the 9th house. You've got this Mars influence activating the 9th. Right. Philosophically speaking, you are going to look much deeper. This is about complex layers and doing your research, investigating, looking beyond the material and the physical, and you challenging what has already been said or studied or taught. And you might even be very thought-provoking in your approach. You get people to think. And because of that, you could challenge other people's worldview. You could challenge other people's beliefs. And then that within itself could create some conflict, honestly. Conflict between you and others. Because maybe you say the thing that other people are trying to avoid or deny. And so by you saying that thing, it gets other people to look at themselves. Ooh. And then I'm also thinking about here possible conflicts between you and maybe bosses and managers or employees, employers, and conflicts to do with what is taught. So could be certain preachers or teachers. So you then challenging other people's faith or other people's delivery. And then because of that, yes, conflict can arise is what I'm trying to get at here. But then also I'm thinking you can help transform the minds of people. Your insights, your depth could be the thing that other people need to hear. It's not about what they want to hear, it's what they need to hear. And then that can create effective change within other people's lifestyles. And then that could also be where you get praise. You're celebrated for your skills, your ability to bring some type of awareness to the collective, to other people. And then this leads us on to the Aquarius influence in the 12th house. So it's the Saturnian influence / a bit of Uranus too, with Scorpio, a bit of Pluto there, right? But with Aquarius in the 10th, this suggests that your spiritual adaptations, well, they are tied to the collective consciousness, how society functions, how it operates, humanity, social identity. It's almost like you get into the minds of the collective, you access their unconscious drives and motivations. And then because of that, you spark change within them. You help other people evolve. You help liberate other people. You help them recognize their blind spots. So there is something here about you in many ways surrendering to a higher power or bringing some type of enlightenment to the lives of others. Naturally, though, what we don't want to do is, especially with the Scorpio square Aquarius stuff, we don't want to get caught up in your way is the only way and that everybody must turn to you for the most solid advice, or people depending on you for your advice. Even, heck, that dependency within itself, it's not necessarily healthy for you either, where everyone's basically turning to you for your wisdom, for your knowledge, for your insights. And maybe a part of that could be very exhausting, where you're feeling drained then spiritually, you're feeling drained psychologically. And this does make sense because with Pisces risings, yes, people tend to merge with you, you merge with other people. So we do want to be mindful of this healthy way of helping the collective, where it's not you going to extremes, where you're giving all of yourself, or where other people are relying on you too heavily, where they're not making their own decisions, then they're not thinking for themselves. They're looking to you as the oracle. They're looking to you as this ultimate guru. And so, yeah, some healthy, I guess, detachment with the Aquarius in the 12th could be a part of your spiritual adaptations. And then that within itself can assist you within communication. So whenever you do communicate with other people, it is from a more healthier place where you're able to ground yourself, be present in your body, to bring awareness to the body. Okay, I'm recognizing that I'm taking this on as my own, or I'm recognizing that I'm getting really involved in this other person's story and it's impacting me, or something's going on with them. So, yes, bringing it back to the body and what your body also needs within those social interactions. Thank you so much, Pisces Risings. And now we're going to move on to Gemini Risings. All right, Gemini Risings, let's talk about these Cadent houses for you. Well, we see that there is this Leo Sun influence in your 3rd house. So this is where we see that communication certainly matters to you. That makes sense, even because with Gemini on the rising, your Mercury ruled. So Mercury is tied to communication. So the sun in the 3rd house of communication highlights confidence. It highlights your ability to make your own decisions about your life. It highlights some form of leadership and personal growth, personal development. also what interests you, what excites you, what do you genuinely enjoy learning about. There's also something here about expressing yourself authentically, so to communicate authentically and to really consider, okay, well, what is enjoyable? What is the enjoyable subject or topic? And to also equally shine within communication, to be recognized for what you say or for what you teach, for what you learn about. Then we come to this Scorpio Mars influence in the sixth house. Okay, this is where we see that when it comes to the everyday, your daily life adaptations, there is such profound change in that your physical environment, your daily habits, your daily rituals can change substantially, especially when it gets to a point where you have reached your limit. You've been doing the same thing, maybe consistently there, or you've been devoting a lot of your life to a particular service or a particular job, some form of employment, to a certain health regime, whatever it is. And then it gets to a point where you have to leave that in the past. It's no longer, it's gone, it's dead, it's outdated. Or it gets to a point where you need to let yourself evolve. You have to let yourself outgrow that habit. Then this could also be where some fears can creep in between the Scorpio and the Leo stuff. Fears to do with, oh, well, what will happen whenever I give up this daily habit? What will happen whenever I leave this job? So yes, fears and doubts could very well creep in, which within themselves could make you doubt your own decision making, the confidence with relation to decision making, like I was trying to say before. Then we come to this Aquarius influence in the ninth house, right? There's this Saturnian Uranus combo. And when we consider your philosophical adaptations, you certainly you evolve, you think bigger, you think wider, you get considering the collective and how there are so many bigger moving pieces to take into consideration, and that often such matters are out of your control. But then that within itself can create this inner frustration within you. I'm thinking about the Scorpio square Aquarius stuff, because maybe you realize that you can't help in the way that you want to. There's only so much you can do for other people, even though maybe you would like to do more. But you also find ways, I think, to help others, to be of service to others. And I think even about you aligning your morality, your faith, your belief system with being quite humane, with being a humanitarian, being generous, charitable, volunteering, just doing what you can essentially to make the world a better place, right? This is what we see when it comes to Gemini risings. But then this is also where we see your ability to evolve, how your mindset can change, especially based on new information, new data that comes in. We see how adaptable you are, Gemini. And then we have here this Taurus. So this Taurus influence in the 12th house. And there's this Venus quality. To think about then your spiritual adaptations, well, I am thinking that what is going to make you feel the most comfortable and grounded is knowing that you have maybe a spiritual practice, a spiritual routine that can help you This is about remaining centered within your body, helping even to quiet your mind. This within itself can help with any stresses or the extreme dynamics to do with your daily habits and routines. Maybe a part of this speaks to trusting that a certain, could be a material thing, opens up, a financial thing opens up whenever you let go. Whenever you're able to say, hey, this daily situation, this practical situation, it's not working. I've outgrown it. This could also speak to your belief systems, your philosophies, your code of ethics, such as you deciding to leave a certain faith, a certain religion, a particular belief system that you've outgrown, you've evolved past it. And so you come to a greater place of acceptance. But that also requires patience, grounding yourself. And then through such a process, this can assist you when it comes to being more confident in your decision making. We come back to this sun influence, so the sun square Venus. And equally, though, I will say that it's also being mindful of overindulgence, overcommitting, overextending, feeling like you need to take more on than you actually physically can. And that requires, I think, some healthy connection with, with your body, because your body's going to communicate when it's not in balance, it's not in a good place. It's going to communicate that to you. That can show up, for example, through anxiety, nerves, trouble sleeping, panic attacks, bad dreams, issues maybe to do with eating or looking after yourself in different ways. Yeah. So indeed, maybe a part of this process for you, Gemini, is about listening to your body. And that makes sense because you can be so up here, right? So caught up in the mind. But hopefully you can learn, and maybe you're there as a Gemini individual. Maybe some changes, Gemini Rising particularly, by the way, maybe some changes have been happening for you with Uranus coming into your sign. I'm recording this, by the way, September 2025. But still, there's something here about aligning both your mind with your body and seeing the healthy connections between the two. Thank you so much, Gemini Risings. And now we are going to move on to Virgo Risings. Virgo Risings, let's talk about these Cadent houses for you. How might they show up? All right, first thing is let's look to this Scorpio influence in the third, this Mars sort of Pluto influence in the third. Well, this is where we see how much you can fixate. Yes, you can certainly fixate, somewhat obsess, become strongly emotionally impacted by what you learn, by what you research, what you see on social media. And this is also where I recommend any Virgo risings out there to be able to limit their social media intake. I'm saying this, by the way, and it could be argued that I'm a total hypocrite because I know that I'm not fully there with this. Yes. See, you can really read into all of this stuff online where you're trying to resolve things in your mind. You're trying to resolve the issues, the controversial topics and concerns within humanity. But yet that can be pretty detrimental for your mental wellness, your mental well-being. Yes. Now, having said that, Having said that, we also see your ability to dissect information, to be able to read through or see through any facades. You're not going to take information at face value here. You're going to step back, observe, see what isn't being said, look at things more deeply, more closely. So on one hand, yes, this can manifest as you digging into things too much, and then you could hurt yourself. You can hurt your feelings by doing that, or become emotionally drained, mentally drained. But on the other hand, we also see your power here, the beauty here to do with information itself. And equally, how you can transform, you can evolve. Okay, then we come to this Aquarius influence in the 6th. So there's the Saturnian, Uranian stuff going on in the 6th house tied to your daily life adaptations. This is a case of you choosing to progress in some way, choosing to evolve in some way when it comes to your daily lifestyle, your daily habits. You could, for example, follow a particular routine, a set way of doing things for a good while, for a substantial amount of time. And then it gets to a point where you're done. You make that decision, you make the call, and you move on. You evolve, right? You leave the past in the past. This could be about a job, a work situation, a coworker relationship. This could be a mindset shift, even, right? The square between Scorpio and Aquarius, a mindset shift that happens, which then leads on to a profound change when it comes to your health, your daily life. And then we come to Taurus in the 9th, and you've got this Venus influence there. When we consider your philosophical adaptations, it can take you a while to truly grasp what could be your code of ethics. It could be what your morals are. It could be about your faith, your religious views. It could take you a while to really define what those things are, maybe because you're trying to consider all of the moving pieces. And this is complex. It's very complex. And maybe that's what you come to learn. That's what you come to understand. And that could even support you with relation to all of the social media stuff that I previously mentioned, where maybe you don't become as concerned about all of that or obsessed to such a point that you are feeling mentally drained from it all. Because maybe Taurus speaks to that greater practicality, that greater your ability to ground yourself and to listen to your body. Like, what is your body trying to communicate to you about all of that information? And that could also be where being more health conscious, being more mindful of your body comes in. Of course, you, just like Gemini, Virgo, you are ruled by Mercury, so you can be very mental, very caught up in your head. You're also an earth sign, right? And so it is this attunement. It's about attuning to your body's needs. And that is a process. That is certainly a process where you're coming to learn how to listen. Yeah, I think that patience, so the patience quality speaks to Taurus in the 9th. Plus, I'm also going to say, when it comes to your philosophical views, your beliefs, you're also going to want to ground those things in the present to make those things useful, right? Practical applications. Maybe also to teach other people about those complex topics and subjects in practical ways, in bite-sized ways for people. And then I'm also thinking here with the square between Aquarius and Taurus. Hey, that could speak to maybe you not align necessarily, co-workers. It could also be a case of maybe you clashing with siblings as well. Just perspectives perspective clashes, especially if you do make your mind up on a particular subject or topic that is tied to morality, is tied to your code of ethics. Could be a case of you not agreeing with particular coworkers, employers. Okay, then we come to this Leo influence in the 12th house. So when we consider your spiritual adaptations, well, this could speak to you addressing any egomaniac concerns where you may feel like you need to be right. I'm also considering the square between Scorpio and Leo, this insatiable sort of fixation, this need to be right, to be heard, to be listened to by others. No, listen to me. This is the way. Can you not see? Can you not see why this is so wrong? Can you not see why this needs to be improved? Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. This is also a part of your gift. It's about improvement, refinement, healthy adjustment, so that life is healthier, life is better for people. But equally, you can drive yourself mad by feeling like you need to fix everything. And a part of that could very well be driven by your ego, by your pride, by your stubbornness. Part of that could also be stemming from maybe your inner child, the part of you that might not have been seen or validated, noticed growing up. So, what's this about? This is about seeing yourself, validating yourself, not having to prove yourself unnecessarily, to prove that you have a point, to prove that you're the intelligent one, or to prove that you're the one who can fix humanity. Yes. And by going through this process, well, you could transform your mindset about your identity. Can transform. Where it's not about having to change everybody's minds. It's not about having to make sure that everybody knows the correct way. You can see those types of things, but you can equally observe and pull back a bit, not just for other people's benefit, but for your own. Thank you so much, Virgo Risings. And now on to Sagittarius Risings. All right, Sagittarius Risings, let's talk about the Cadent houses for you. Let's think about the Saturn Uranian influence in your third house. Aquarius is there. So you tend to be the types of people who prefer to think for yourselves. And anytime that people try to force their opinion on you, they try to force you to maybe change your mind, to change your decision, to change what you think, that can set off major alarm bells in your mind. And you could very well push back against that. You tend to challenge the status quo, to go against what is considered the norm. And so you're going to more so do this communication wise. You're going to think this way. Your mindset is going to be like this. Then we come to, and we'll circle back to that, by the way, the Aquarius in the third. Then we come to this Taurus influence in the sixth. And there's this Venus quality there. So when we consider your daily life, your daily habits, you do prefer some kind of order, routine, consistency. And it's those routines that help you feel more grounded, more stable and secure. And so what I'm thinking here is that anything that threatens this safety and this security for you, that is when your mindset is going to kick in and it's going to go, hold on, no, I'm not having that. And then also I'm thinking that you need to feel like there is some type of order in your life. It's interesting to me because with Sagittarius on the rising, yeah, it does suggest that you're the types of people who are about exploration, maybe traveling, encouraging people to travel, encouraging people to experience life, try new things. Life starts outside of your comfort zone. That could be a big thing for many Sagittarius risings. But you also like having something safe and secure to return to. Like there's something familiar there. And so you can be quite firm in terms of, okay, who do you allow into your space? Who do you allow into your life? If it's overly chaotic, overly dramatic, people are just me, take, that's a big no. So this could be where we see you preferring to consider what is healthiest for you, even connecting with your body more so with Taurus in the 6th. Then we come to this Leo influence in the 9th. We've got the sun there activating it. So when we consider your philosophical adaptations, well, there could be something about enjoying, could be the learning process. It could be about higher education. So to enjoy maybe this process involved in maybe some training or programs, courses. There could also be a genuine enjoyment for long distance travel and trying, right? That we go back to this Sagittarius thing that I was saying earlier, trying new things, expanding your horizons, right? The 9th house is about expanding our horizons. So you may feel like that is so much about your identity, that is so much about what makes you you. And then equally, if you do believe in something, right, it could be a belief system here, a philosophical view, a religious view, your faith, you could very well be so set on that. Like, no, this is what I believe. I'm not going to easily be swayed. Also, I'm going to share what I know with others. I'm going to teach, possibly preach. You're known for preaching at other people at times too. And equally, there is an enthusiasm. There's such an enthusiasm when it comes to how you teach others. You spark this excitement within other people. You bring warmth to other people. Maybe a part of your philosophical view is to do with joy, spreading joy to others, giving to others. So that also explains why when people try to take, it's a big no, because you might think, why are you doing that? That's so unkind. Let's be generous. Let's be giving. Let's be loving. These types of views could come in with relation to your morality, your code of ethics. Then we come to Scorpio in the 12th. All right, there's Mars, Pluto influence in your 12th. Let's speak to your spiritual adaptations then, because I think what a lot of this stuff that the stuff that we've highlighted essentially so far, a lot of it is being driven by your unconscious drives and motivations, maybe to do with self-preservation, to do with past traumas, fears, what you've repressed over the years, not wanting to relive those experiences again, not wanting to be stuck in this traumatic event, or not wanting other people to try to control or demand or dominate. And then also, I consider here, how likely are you to address what is hidden, to address what is buried? How likely are you to go into those more sensitive areas? And this is not to say that you should, and I think I have said this before, it's not necessarily saying that you have to open up Pandora's box. But what we don't want to happen is for you to be ruled by this stuff, controlled by, consumed by this stuff, where then it becomes this case of, I'm not going to listen to anyone. I have the say. And you push people away. You test people's trust. You test people's loyalty to you. You get caught up in self-destruction, self-sabotage, where nothing is good enough. If people don't agree with you, well, then it's my way or the highway, right? Or if anybody ever challenges your authority, then again, it's this thing of, no, I'm not going to have this. So this is what I mean. It's recognizing whenever you're being controlled by this stuff to such an extent that actually you're pushing yourself further into this dark place where it's not healthy for you. So what I'm thinking here is you creating emotional bonds, developing emotional bonds with people where there's that self-respect, there is greater listening, and you create healthy friendships, healthy relationships, where it's comprised, those relationships, they're comprised of depth. I'm thinking about Scorpio, Square, Aquarius here. They are comprised of depth, and they're comprised of listening to one another, being fair, being kind to one another. And then at the same time, if you do find yourself caught up in these, maybe it could be reoccurring cycles and themes that are somehow tied to past sibling connections, past relationships with peers or classmates. If you find yourself in these cycles, this is where it's about, okay, what's going on? Bringing awareness to those themes. And then you'll be able to know what to do moving forward. Essentially, in my view, this is about you learning to create healthy emotional connections and bonds with others where it's based on trust and loyalty and respect. Thank you so much, Sagittarius Risings. And now we are going to move on to Aries Risings. Aries Risings. Let's talk about these Cadent houses for you. Right, you've got this Gemini Mercury influence in the third house, highlighting your ability to adjust, to adapt to new information, your eagerness to learn. Yes, you may be open to learning from multiple different sources. You might even fact check, right? You'll fact check quite a bit and see how true a particular piece of research is, or data, right? Is the data accurate? Has the data been analyzed enough, assessed enough? And you're going to want to make your own conclusions. Now, as for this Virgo influence in the sixth house, so when we look to the sixth house, it's so much about our daily life adaptations, how we adapt and adjust there. We see your ability to adjust accordingly based on the most effective and efficient way of doing things. You can be quite detail orientated about your routines and your habits, quite particular, maybe, about the order in which you do things. You might also consider what is a priority versus what isn't a priority. And you can also give and offer your practical advice to others. Quite the problem solvers, yes. And you can also jump in pretty quickly to solve problems for other people. I think even about your mental quickness, so your quick wit, and how you can be a pretty fast communicator, just swift. There's something basically about your delivery that comes across as quite swift, but also it comes from a place of practical analysis, practical application too. Yes, the way I view this is you can condense information really well. So you can take maybe something that is more complicated and quite wordy, and you can put that information into something that's a lot more simplified for other people. And it could be a case of that information coming across as practical, useful for others. Naturally, at the same time, due to the fact that Mercury is still making a square to Mercury, so the Virgo influence squared the Gemini influence, this does require some refinement. It's not something that you learn maybe overnight, or it may not be something that comes naturally easy to you. It could require some effort and study. I'm thinking about this as you studying for a long time, improving. It's all about those gradual improvements that you make, and then aligning those gradual improvements with your daily life. Okay, then we have this Sagittarius influence in the ninth. And this right here is where we see your passion to want to distribute knowledge, to share what you've been learning about, to share what you know with the world, your desire to want to try new things, explore events and experiences that are way out of your comfort zone. And possibly it could be you moving abroad, moving to an entirely different country for learning reasons, could be college, university. Could also be a case of you spreading your wings in many ways when it comes to your beliefs, your worldview. This is where we even see your physical adaptations, your ability to adjust with relation to your philosophical views and your religious beliefs. And then equally sharing what you have learned. Could be a case of sharing your journey, maybe a personal journey for you with an audience, publishing that, broadcasting that. But from this perspective, maybe of help and service in some way, when we think about the Virgo square Sagittarius, equally because of that square, this could also manifest as things not being so practical at times, right? Because whilst there is a part of this that speaks to your practical applications, there's another part of this that may not be so practical, such as this whole thing of realizing that one size does not fit all. You might have to adjust a bit there to see that just because you've experienced something in a particular way doesn't mean that everybody else has. So there could be this kind of back and forth to do with this stuff. And then, of course, you can improve within itself too, right? Then we come to Pisces in the 12th house. So let's explore the spiritual adaptations with Pisces there. Well, this could be a case of you learning to quiet your mind, to silence the chitter chatter, to recognize that life isn't all so logical and evidence-based, that it's good to leave some room for the unknown, for what isn't fully defined and seen. This could be a case of tuning in to what your intuition is trying to tell you about a situation. Equally, yes, it's also about how your intuition aligns with logic, with the evidence, with reason. I especially think about that through a lens of the Gemini square Pisces. But still, maybe it is through your own ability to reflect or to go with valuable lessons about the unknown. And then that within itself can even help you with other people, how you show up within the world and supporting other people, the conversations that you have maybe with others. So there's a part of it where, yes, it's practical, it's logical, it's rational, but then there's also a big part of this that speaks to the abstract, to what isn't so evident. And then also maybe trusting yourself, trusting in a new path, opening yourself up to a new experience, a new opportunity without having all of the necessary things in place. Could be a case of you having to take a leap of faith at times throughout your life. So maybe not necessarily knowing why at the time, but then when you go into that new experience and you give it a while, then the why becomes more known, right? Then you think, right, I can see the reason here. I can see the reason behind this experience. Thank you so much, Aries Risings. And now we're going to move on to Cancer Risings. Okay, Cancer Risings, let's talk about the Cadent houses for you. How might they show up? So firstly, let's consider this Mercury Virgo influence in the 3rd house. This is where we see your ability to communicate in practical ways, your ability to take information and to make it digestible, to simplify it for others. So it's your ability to make use of what you learn, to make use of information that can really support you here. And then this is also where we see your intelligence, maybe being told that you're very gifted at making information that more understandable for other people. Plus, this can also manifest as you yourself, you could overthink, you could overanalyze, you could overcomplicate things too, because you're trying to be so detailed. Still, I would say that it's your ability to be detailed, to be matter of fact, that, we see this gift. Now, as for Sagittarius in the 6th house, you've got this Jupiter influence ruling your 6th house. So to consider your daily adaptations, your daily life, there's some adjustment required to think about. So going overboard comes to mind, overcommitting, overextending, maybe making some type of decision to do with your daily habits, your working life, your schedules, but then you haven't really thought it through. You haven't really thought about, well, can I actually take that on? Is this going to cause me more stress? So then when we look to the square between Virgo and Sagittarius, we do see this potential for stress, this potential for you maybe putting too much on your plate. And then that requires some refinement, some assessment about, okay, well, is this working? Using your discernment, right? Is this working? Is this worth it? And if something isn't worth it, maybe this is where you gotta consider, right? Okay, well, I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna cut back on that. Equally, yes, with the Sagittarius and the 6th house influence, this can manifest as you feeling somewhat more uplifted, hopeful, optimistic about your schedules and daily routines. Maybe sharing what you learn as a work thing that could be involved within your work, within your services. And you may even find that you get so much joy out of this, joy out of teaching, joy out of sharing with others, maybe sharing with coworkers, employees. Now, let's think about also this Pisces influence in the 9th house. So speaking to your philosophical adaptations, well, there is certainly something to be said about your spiritual growth, your spiritual awareness. Maybe having to ask yourself if a particular belief system is healthy, if it's doable, manageable. Is it good for you? Is it good for the collective? What types of beliefs do you take on as your own? Can you be honest about particular beliefs, views that you've outgrown or that do not align with you, maybe practically speaking? Considering even sacrificing yourself for a higher power? Don't get me wrong, it could be a case of you feeling aligned with that, thinking about your faith, your religious views, spirituality. But if it does get to a point where it's not useful, it's not healthy, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Pisces, maybe that's where the discernment also needs to come in here with Virgo in the third. Then let's think about here Gemini, this Gemini influence in the 12th house. So to touch on your spiritual adaptations, I think this highlights the relationship you have with your mind, with your thoughts. How likely are you to, for example, challenge what is taught to you, what is passed on to you? How likely are you to maybe be misguided or falsely led by information, misinformation? I'm thinking about the deceptive stuff to do with Pisces, Scorpio, Gemini there. And I think a part of that is to do with either quieting, could be quieting your mind. It could be stopping for a moment to question what is real. It could be about learning from the past, maybe what's been passed on to you from family, your upbringing. Which kinds of messaging have you received throughout your life? Is there anything about your conditioning there, your mindset? And then that within itself can suggest improvement. That can lead to greater improvement. Because if, for example, you do consider, right, this particular belief system, I can see how it was shaped by my family or by this expectation. If you can notice that, then maybe you can set out to create change. You can change your beliefs, deeply held beliefs about yourself, about how you see the world. And then that within itself can even result in you feeling less anxious, more calm, regulating your nervous system, possibly. That can also possibly speak to your ability to say, hey, I cannot take that on right now. I'm full, right? My capacity to take that on, it has reached its peak. And I have to step back right now. Have to think about rest, have to think about my mindset, my mental wellness. And I'm also going to say here with Gemini in the 12th house to consider your spiritual adaptations. Maybe a part of it does speak to picking apart certain threads of information. And that could be where the analysis comes in. It's like, okay, well, this is true for you as the Cancer rising. This is what I think. This is what is healthy for me. Oh, this thing over here, I can't cope with that. That's too much for me to take in right now. And then maybe also bringing awareness to times whenever you are mentally overwhelmed. I think about mental exhaustion here. And it's that mental exhaustion too that could cloud your vision. It could cloud your understanding. It might even cloud your intuition. It can block you from maybe making a healthier decision for yourself. Thank you so much, Cancer Risings. And now we're going to move on to Libra Risings. All right, Libra Risings. Let's discuss these hidden houses for you. How might they show up? Let's explore Sagittarius in the third house, this Jupiter influence in the third house. First thing I'm going to say here is that, well, to consider your mental adaptations, there's something about the bigger picture here. There's something about you expanding your mind and wanting to learn from different cultures, different ways of life. But then again, this can also manifest as a particular belief system that you live your life according to. Maybe your belief system has changed or adapted in some way. So, for example, maybe you were raised in a really religious household, and then later on in your life, you come to learn that those principles, those morals, and those teachings do not align with you. Or it could be a case of you not being religious, not at all being religious, and then you later come to learn about a new religion and you take that on. Then your communication changes because of that. So what you say to people, how you interact with people naturally is going to change because your belief system has changed, your worldview has changed, your morals. Then we move to this Pisces influence in the 6th house. So to consider your everyday, your daily adaptations, well, things can certainly be tricky here, because there could be some days where you feel like you can get through your daily tasks, you feel like you can get through the day just fine. But then there can be other days or periods of the day where in which it's all too much. It's overwhelming, it's stressful. Maybe that could be dependent on how much you actually have to do. Because I equally think there are some lessons here to do with how much you take on as your own, how much you add to your plate, basically. And that can maybe speak to that Jupiter square Jupiter stuff between Pisces and Sagittarius. Don't get me wrong, there could be plenty of you Libra Risings out there who make this appear effortless, flawless, like you've got this. And then also it could be a case of you feeling that call, right? The higher calling, your higher meaning to do with your work, your job, all of the daily tasks to do. But I'm also thinking about health, reset, times when you could really do with the off switch. So to have those days or those moments when you can rest, naturally, that might not be the most practical thing, depending on your lifestyle, depending on what you've got going on. Could be many Libra risings out there, for example, who have children to look after. And it's not just a simple case of, oh, well, time to rest. But even on that note, it is a question of how much all of that might influence your mood or your day, your health. So when we consider the adapting, the adjusting, maybe this is where we see healthy adapting, maybe more so aligning yourself with something spiritual that can support you and anchor you in some way. Okay, then we come to this Gemini influence in the 9th house. And this is where we see your desire, maybe desire is not the right word, but you can communicate very well with the collective. You can publish, broadcast, pass on your opinion. You can take large pieces of information, maybe tied to the bigger picture, maybe certain topics or subjects that are very complex, and you can make those topics and subjects somewhat concise to the point. Maybe there's even something about enjoying the learning process, getting together within your local area with people, chatting about your beliefs with others, gaining new perspectives from others, and then that within itself is what can create that belief system change, like I previously mentioned with Sagittarius in the third. Okay, then we come to this Virgo influence in the 12th. And with Virgo in the 12th, when we consider your spiritual adaptations, there is something here about health, spiritual lessons to do with health, spiritual lessons to do with your body, grounding yourself in your body, spiritual lessons to do with your daily habits, rituals, routines, what isn't working for you. And you know that within yourself, deep down. But it's a question of, are you willing to listen to your inner guide? Are you willing to listen to your intuition? Maybe even that could be where there is some inconsistencies present, inconsistencies between what you believe in and what is shared collectively, what you teach to others, versus what you know deep down within yourself needs to change for the better, so that there is healthier improvement, so that adjustments can be made. Maybe a part of this is about you recognizing could be about people pleasing. It could be about living your life according to other people's expectations and standards. It could be a case of you exploring why possibly you need a lot of validation, or why you're trying to appease to everyone or please everyone. Maybe these types of questions come in. Or it could be a case of you really asking yourself, are certain routines and daily habits doable for the long term? What is manageable? What can you be consistent with? How can you, in a way, tip those scales, right? Your Libra Rising scales, so that matters don't feel as heavy, so that matters don't feel as stressful or burdensome, overwhelming. And the last thing then I want to mention, I guess, with this is, let's bring it back to this Sagittarius influence. So maybe the square between Virgo and Sagittarius speaks to the very practical applications of your beliefs. Maybe there are certain belief systems or views that you have that aren't actually so practical. They're not actually that grounded in reality. So it could be a case of trying to bring some type of awareness to that. So, for example, when might you talk the talk, right? Gemini in the 9th house, but you're not actually living your life according to what you're preaching, what you're saying. And that could speak to the Sagittarius in the 3rd house. How can you walk the walk as well? So if, for instance, you are unknowingly acting in these ways where you are trying to preach a message to the collective about a healthier path, a healthier way, but you're not actually aligning with those things within your own life, maybe it's about stepping back and really using greater discernment. And this is not about trying to say, that you're a hypocrite or that you're wrong or what are you doing. I'm really just trying to touch on how this brings it back to your well-being, what you need to support yourself. Thank you so much, Libra Risings. And now lastly, we are going to explore Capricorn Risings. Okay, Capricorn Risings, let's talk about these Cadent houses for you. Firstly, we see there is Pisces in the 3rd house, so some of this Jupiter/Neptune influence in your 3rd house. Well, to me, what this suggests is that you tend to take in information in such a physiological way, in such an emotional way, where it's almost like information itself can entirely, completely change your mood, where you become somewhat merged with it, very empathetic, very compassionate, really moved by information. Now, one way to think about this is that it speaks to your creativity. It speaks to your artistic ways of communicating. And it speaks to how information does move through you. And that could be through music, art, dance, right? So that's a really beautiful thing. Poetry. My goodness. I know some Capricorn risings who are amazing at poetry. Beautiful. However, this can also manifest as you taking all of that on as your own and then becoming drained. Very drained. And maybe you need some rest. You need to take a step back. Okay, but then we think about here Gemini in the 6th. And when we consider this in terms of your daily life adaptations, yes, we see your ability to adjust, to adapt to a new role, a new position, a new schedule, a new order, right? A new way of doing things. We see that. But then we also see the mental load that you tend to carry, the multitasking. But often that multitasking can get to a point where it's too much. Yes, this can highlight or indicate that there are some type of gifts to do with multitasking, but it can also indicate that multitasking within itself can cause a lot of stress in your life, strain. And then I'm also considering this Gemini square Pisces. Maybe the multitasking comes about because a lot of people are trying to ask for things from you, or because you're being moved by information. And then next thing you know, you're thinking about that stuff, and then you are doing things to try to cater towards whatever it is. Maybe even taking on, for example, extra shifts at work because that coworker is asking for your help, for your support, and you'll take that on. You can be very hands-on, right? Capricorn risings, very hands-on, very practical people. You're willing to help people out, very supportive people. But I'm also getting from this how you might take on too much at times. And then you might have to adjust accordingly. That could be where having to adapt comes in. Okay, then we have this Virgo influence in the 9th. And what we can think about here then, when it comes to your philosophical adaptations, is how you're going to adjust your morals, your code of ethics, your worldview, your belief systems based on their practical usage, how they're really applied, how they show up evidently through experience too, through your own life's experiences. And so from this perspective, you might even offer your practical advice to others, your practical guidance, because you've lived it, right? It's like this is a lived experience for the Capricorn rising for you. And so you can offer your guidance. And then that can even be viewed as wisdom. That can be viewed as help, practical help. Okay, and then we come to this Sagittarius influence in the 12th house. So to consider your spiritual adaptations, well, perhaps this speaks to, could be about your faith, optimism, hope, belief, believing in something, believing in the impossible, making room for that. And this could be where miracles are born, because Even though you recognize that life is full of adversity, it's full of challenges. Capricorns, right? Capricorns are known for facing adversity, overcoming adversity, building resilience through that. So even though you understand this stuff, Sagittarius in the 12th, I think, speaks to not giving up, believing that the storm will pass, believing that there is tomorrow, there's always tomorrow. A new day comes. And it's about how you even share that generosity with others, how you share your knowledge with others, passing on what you have learned about your hardships to the collective. And again, it's applying that stuff in practical ways for people so that they can understand it for themselves more simply. So to me, this does suggest that you care a great deal about how your actions impact others. You recognize that there are consequences to your actions, to other people's actions. And so you may set out to instill that into others, pass on your wisdom to other people. Naturally, that could show up in very simple everyday ways for people, or it could show up in bigger ways for people. I guess it depends on what the situation is. Though, perhaps to touch on this square between Sagittarius and Pisces, maybe it is your moral compass that is the very thing that leads to greater compassionate conversations, greater empathy for other people. But equally, it's also your moral compass that can help you set effective boundaries when you need to. You can learn to separate, to create space between you and other people as well. Because it is possible to be almost too, empathetic to a fault where there's such a sacrifice. And, well, it can lead to people taking us for granted or walking all over us, right? Treating us like doormats. So maybe this square also speaks to this part of you that is able to go within and say, hold on, I wouldn't treat another person like this according to my moral compass. So why on earth is someone else treating me like this? And then also to speak to the Gemini square Virgo stuff, maybe that is partly about your health conscious philosophical views clashing at times with the things that are not so healthy, that are just distractions, that are maybe excuses or reasons to not do something or to not want to address something that's a bit more complicated for your daily life, within your daily life, to think about your daily habits and routines. So by you maybe growing in your views to do with being health conscious, and there could be a lot of knowledge and learning to do with that, then that's where things can change for you too when it comes to any unhealthy ways of coping or showing up practically. And lastly, then, to speak to this Virgo square Sagittarius stuff, hey, maybe certain measures are not so practical. Maybe there are times whenever you can go overboard, you can overcommit. There are times whenever you take on responsibilities that actually just feel like a burden. And this right here could be where healthy discernment comes in. Also, this could be where you can base your moral compass upon what you learn then. And that's where even the refinement here of Virgo can come in, refining your philosophical views. I even consider, yes, the ninth house is about our philosophical adaptations, but Sagittarius then is also about our morals as well. So it's about basically attuning to what your morals are and living your life according to those morals, and then asking yourself about times when you're not. Thank you so much, Capricorn Risings. And with that being said, everybody, this has been the video all about the Cadent houses in astrology. So thinking about them as these houses of change, houses of adjustment. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for watching. If you would like to book a reading with me, you can visit my website, hannahselsewhere.com. Things are going to be a lot more personalized by booking a reading. And if you did benefit anyway from the information presented today, you can always buy me a coffee. Make sure to like the video if you did benefit from it. Subscribe if you have not already. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!